I felt the cold glass slip from my hand, the warm champagne spilling across my dress as I stared at her. Victoria. My stepmother. That flawless smile that could freeze hearts in an instant. You really think you belong here, Maria? Her voice was soft, like honey with venom hidden beneath. You're replaceable. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my trembling. I just want to be part of the family. My words sounded pathetic even to me. Victoria laughed, but it was hollow. Cruel. I had seen it before, countless times. In the past I'd forgotten or tried to forget. But this time, it was different. Before I could react, the world tilted. The chandelier above me wobbled. The light fractured into a million shards. Pain exploded in my head. My vision blurred, darkness pulling me in. And then, nothing. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a room that smelled faintly of jasmine. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains. I froze. This was my old bedroom. My heart started racing. No, I whispered, voice shaking. It can't be. I'm back. I scrambled out of bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror. 10-year-old me stared back, wide-eyed and naive, the day I first entered the Wilson mansion. I swallowed hard. Memories of betrayal, loneliness, and death flooded me. And beneath it all, a flame ignited. This time, I whispered to my reflection, I won't be the victim. I'll rise. I'll expose her. And I'll win. Breakfast was chaos as usual. I stepped into the dining room, Lucy bounding ahead of me. My loyal friend, still the same bright-eyed girl she'd always been. Maria, you're finally awake. Mom's making breakfast. Lucy chirped. I smiled faintly, letting her excitement wash over me. Thanks, Lucy. But I have a lot to think about. Victoria's eyes flicked to me as I entered, sharp and calculating. Good morning, children. Maria, I hope you're ready to learn your place. I bowed slightly, a polite smile masking the fire within. Of course, stepmother. I've been thinking about the family, and how I can contribute. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't know yet that I remembered everything. That I had another chance. Ethan. My stepbrother. Cold, distant, and somehow always angry with me. He stared at me across the table, a frown creasing his sharp features. Something in his gaze was different this time, uneasy, questioning. Some things, different about her, he muttered under his breath, though I caught it perfectly. After breakfast, I retreated to my room. I pulled out a notebook, flipping through blank pages. It would be my journal, my weapon, my record. Every scheme, every manipulation, every betrayal. I would remember it all, and I would use it. Over the next few hours, I began observing the household carefully. Victoria's soft words masked countless schemes, financial manipulations, social power plays, subtle psychological games. Everything she had done to me before, I could now see clearly. I started quietly forming plans. Little by little, I would reclaim what was mine and more. Night fell. I stood by the window, staring at the city lights that stretched endlessly below. The Wilson mansion, my prison and my stage. You've changed. Maria. Are you okay? Ethan's voice broke my thoughts. He was behind me now, and I could feel his eyes studying me with suspicion. I turned to him, a calm smile on my face, hiding the storm in my heart. I'm better than okay, Ethan. I'm ready. His brow furrowed. There was suspicion, and something else. Something protective. He didn't understand yet, but I could feel it. And I could feel her. Victoria, in the shadows, completely unaware that her world was about to unravel. This time, I would not be the stepdaughter everyone hated. This time, I would control my fate. I had slept, but it wasn't really sleep. My mind had been racing, replaying Victoria's smile, Ethan's suspicious gaze, and the painful memories I now carried with me like weapons. The morning sun spilled across my room, warm and deceptive. Outside, birds sang as if the world were peaceful, but I knew better. The Wilson mansion was a battlefield disguised as a home. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple outfit that would draw no attention. Subtlety was my first weapon. Downstairs, the staff greeted me like they always did, polite smiles, whispered comments, but I saw what Victoria never noticed: loyalty and fear woven tightly together. Many of the staff had suffered under her control, quietly enduring her manipulation. I could use that. "Good morning, Maria." The housekeeper, Mrs. Thompson, inclined her head. Her eyes flickered toward Victoria nervously, betraying years of silent suffering. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson," I replied softly. "How are things in the household today?" Her eyes widened slightly at my tone. No longer timid, I spoke like someone who belonged and who had the power to influence. Breakfast was tense. Victoria, ever poised, scrutinized my every move, likely searching for the same submissive Maria she had always expected. But I was different now. I smiled, nodded politely, answered questions with insight. Ethan, as usual, sat quietly across from me, eating in silence. But I caught him staring. Again. His frown was sharper today, his suspicion growing. I allowed myself a small smile. Let him wonder. Let him question. After breakfast, I wandered the mansion as if exploring for the first time. Every hallway, every door, every office, it was all familiar, yet now I could see the cracks beneath the glittering facade. Victoria kept her schemes hidden, but the patterns were there: secret accounts, hidden letters, manipulative arrangements. I paused in front of her study door, imagining the possibilities. This time, I thought, I will know everything before she strikes. Later, I approached Lucy, who was helping me with my studies. "Lucy," I said quietly, "I need your help. There are things happening in this house that you and I need to understand." Her eyes widened, curiosity and loyalty mixing in equal parts. "Maria, what do you mean?" "I mean," I whispered, "that not everyone here has our best interests at heart. And some people are planning things that could hurt us. I need to know what they are hiding." She nodded, her expression serious. "I trust you, Maria. Always." That small alliance was the first of many. Allies were power. Power was survival. As the day went on, I carefully tested Victoria's reaction to small hints. A question about finances. A casual comment about a social engagement. She responded, as expected, with calculated words and hidden threats. But I was prepared. I remained calm, collected, untouchable. Ethan's presence lingered throughout the day. He watched silently, and I began noticing patterns in his behavior. Protective gestures. Subtle shifts when Victoria spoke harshly. A tightness in his jaw when he suspected danger. He's going to be a problem, or an ally, I mused. I just need to figure out which. Night fell, and I returned to my room, exhausted but exhilarated. I poured my thoughts into my journal, detailing everything I had seen. Victoria's subtle manipulations. The staff's fears. Ethan's growing suspicion. Each word, each observation, a step toward the future I now controlled. I paused, staring at the city lights beyond the window. The mansion was quiet now, but the war had already begun. A soft knock startled me. Ethan's voice came from the door, hesitant. "You're acting different," he said softly. "I don't know why, but be careful." I smiled faintly, the calm mask never slipping. "I've never been more careful, Ethan. Thank you for worrying." He lingered a moment longer, then left, his presence leaving a strange warmth I couldn't name. Alone again, I whispered into the darkness, "This time, I control the game." And somewhere in the mansion, Victoria's shadowed figure watched, unaware that her stepdaughter had already begun her first move. The Wilson mansion had a rhythm that only I seemed to notice. Every movement, every glance, every whispered word had a meaning if you were paying attention. And I was paying attention. Today, I made my first real move. Not an obvious one. Not yet. A whisper here, a question there, a casual glance that suggested curiosity rather than suspicion. But in my hands, even the smallest hint could become a weapon. It started in Victoria's study. She had left the door slightly ajar, a careless mistake, or perhaps a test. I paused at the threshold, listening. The house was quiet, the faint ticking of the antique clock loud in the silence. Inside, ledgers lay scattered across her polished desk. I recognized them immediately: financial accounts, investments, and a trail of manipulations. Real estate transactions that benefited her private accounts, donations supposedly for charity that had vanished into her pockets. I crouched silently, flipping through pages with trembling hands, excitement and fear twisting in my chest. "So this is how she's been controlling everything," I whispered. "She's been stealing from her own family, from me." A plan formed in my mind. I wouldn't confront her directly. Not yet. Victoria thrived on control and intimidation. But I could expose her without revealing myself too soon. I could plant evidence carefully, quietly, and watch her crumble on her own. The next morning, I walked into breakfast with calculated composure. Victoria's eyes immediately scanned me, suspicion beneath her perfect veneer. I smiled innocently, carefully casual. Ethan was watching me more closely than ever. I caught him observing my gestures, noting the smallest shifts in my expression. "Maria," he said quietly, as we sat at the table, "you've been acting strange lately. I don't know what's going on, but I have a feeling you know something." My lips curved into a gentle smile. "I suppose I've just been thinking more, Ethan. About the family, about the future." He frowned, unconvinced. The future, or something else? I let the question hang in the air, my gaze calm, unreadable. He didn't push further, though the tension in his jaw suggested he wanted to. By midday, I began subtle planting. A misplaced ledger on Victoria's chair. A whispered rumor to the housekeeper about inconsistencies in donations. Little nudges that would begin to unravel her carefully curated image. I could feel the invisible threads of influence weaving under my fingertips. I had always been powerless here, but now, I was a ghost no one could see, quietly bending events to my favor. Victoria, of course, remained unaware, or at least, she pretended to be. She continued her usual cold, calculated behavior, instructing the staff, speaking with investors, making her public appearances. But the cracks were already forming. Ethan's suspicion grew with each passing moment. He approached me later, in the quiet library. His dark eyes held a mixture of concern and unease. "You're different," he said softly, leaning against the doorway. "I don't know why, but I can't shake this feeling that something's off. Are you in danger? Or are you the danger?" I tilted my head slightly, meeting his gaze with calm precision. "I'm neither, Ethan. I'm simply careful now. And I'm paying attention." He stared at me a long moment, then nodded slowly, as if unsure what to make of my answer. That night, I returned to my journal. Every transaction, every subtle hint I had gathered, every shadow I had observed in the house, I wrote it down meticulously. Each page was a roadmap for the empire I would build, and for the downfall of the woman who had once tried to destroy me. From the window, I saw Victoria's silhouette pacing the halls below. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she had everyone fooled. I whispered into the darkness, my voice steady, "Not anymore. Your time is coming, Victoria. And this time, I won't just survive. I will conquer." Somewhere behind me, Ethan's presence lingered, a silent shadow, watching, questioning, protecting, whether he knew it or not. And for the first time, I felt truly unstoppable. The Wilson estate had always been a stage. Every visitor, every gathering, every whispered compliment or criticism was a carefully choreographed performance, Victoria's performance. And today, I was about to step onto that stage. I wore a modest yet elegant dress, one that drew attention without demanding it. Subtlety was key. Arrogance or recklessness would ruin everything. Victoria would never suspect a thing. The gathering was in full swing when I arrived. The grand hall was glittering with chandeliers, the rich hum of polite conversation filling the air. Investors, family friends, socialites, Victoria's world. I moved carefully, every gesture precise, every smile measured. Lucy followed quietly, a loyal shadow. She had grown used to my whispered instructions and subtle nudges, and she moved like a trained accomplice. Victoria was at the center, radiant in her expensive gown, directing attention to herself as always. I watched her for a moment, noting the angle of her head, the way her laugh hid a subtle sting, the way her eyes sought admiration from everyone around her. And then I made my move. It began small, a compliment from a visiting socialite about something I had quietly arranged, a charity donation I had redirected subtly, a careful act that made it look as though Victoria had orchestrated it. Her smile faltered when she realized the attention shifted from her to me. She tried to recover quickly, but the damage was done. Whispers began circulating, guests commenting on my initiative, my graceful presence, and intelligent contributions. I let it happen, letting the social currents carry me forward while Victoria fumed silently in the background. Ethan was by my side, watching every interaction. His protective instincts were taut, like a coiled spring. I could see it in the way he scanned the crowd, the way his jaw tightened whenever someone looked at me too long, the way his eyes darkened when he noticed Victoria's thinly veiled glares. "You're bold," he muttered quietly as we moved through the room. I smiled faintly. "Bold enough to survive," I replied. And survival was only the beginning. By evening, the whispers had grown louder. Victoria's perfectly planned evening had subtly unraveled. She forced herself to smile, but her usual ease was gone. I had planted small seeds, a slightly off-handed correction to her accounts, a suggestion to the investors that made her presentation slightly stumble, all unnoticed by everyone except her. But I had noticed. Every twitch, every forced laugh, every flicker of annoyance was a victory. Later, as the guests began to leave, I lingered near the grand staircase. Ethan appeared beside me, his expression unreadable but tense. You're dangerous," he said, almost as if confessing something to himself. Not in a bad way, but I don't know why, he hesitated, searching for the right words. "You're not the same Maria I knew." I tilted my head, meeting his gaze with calm intensity. "I'm the Maria who survived. And I won't be helpless again." He was silent for a long moment, then simply nodded. His protective aura seemed to grow stronger, though he didn't yet fully understand it. That night, I returned to my room, exhausted but exhilarated. Victoria's carefully crafted image had cracked just a little in public, and I had orchestrated it. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. I opened my journal, noting every detail, the way Victoria's smile faltered, the subtle way the guests looked at me, Ethan's growing tension. Each page was a roadmap, each observation a piece of the empire I was building. And as I wrote, I whispered into the darkness, "This is only the beginning, Victoria. Your empire may look perfect, but I will dismantle it, brick by brick. And everyone will see the truth." Somewhere down the hall, Ethan lingered outside my door, watching silently. Protective. Suspicious. Unknowingly aligned with my plans. For the first time, I felt the thrill of power, not fear, not despair, but power. And I intended to wield it ruthlessly. The mansion felt different today. Heavy. Tense. The kind of weight that lingers just beneath the surface, making every glance, every step, every word feel like it carried hidden danger. Victoria had noticed. I could feel it, the subtle shift in her posture, the way her eyes followed me longer than usual, the faint tightening of her jaw whenever I smiled too confidently. Her realization had come slowly, like a storm creeping in over the horizon. She had finally noticed that I was no longer the naive, obedient girl she once controlled. And that fear, thin, sharp, and dangerous, had begun to seep into her every action. It began with subtle tests. Victoria would ask me questions in public gatherings, phrased innocently, but loaded with traps. She would deliberately misplace documents and watch for my reaction, trying to catch me off guard. But I had prepared for every one of her schemes. When she questioned me in front of the staff about a donation ledger, I smiled calmly, my tone gentle, almost apologetic. "Oh, stepmother, I noticed that the ledger seemed slightly off, so I took the liberty of correcting it. I'm so sorry if it caused any confusion." Her smile faltered. It was supposed to be a smile of triumph, but it cracked. She blinked, recalibrating. The staff exchanged subtle glances, sensing the shift in power but unable to place the cause. Ethan was watching from the side. His eyes were sharper than ever, and his usual composure had an edge of tension. Protective. Suspicious. And though he would never admit it, concerned. Later, I caught him lingering outside the study. He spoke quietly, his voice low enough that no one else could hear. Maria, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't understand how you always know everything. But you need to be careful. She's dangerous. I studied him. Ethan's gaze was intense, protective, bordering on feral. I realized something in that moment. His instincts weren't just about caution, he cared deeply. And that care could become a liability or an advantage. Don't worry, I said softly. I know how to handle her. And I'm not the same girl she thinks she can manipulate anymore. He nodded, but the tension didn't leave him. If anything, it seemed to thicken, as if his awareness of danger was starting to intertwine with something else. Something unspoken. Victoria's next move was subtle and cruel. She began whispering rumors among the household staff, attempting to isolate me, to make me seem untrustworthy. But I anticipated it. I had allies in every corner, Mrs. Thompson, Lucy, and even a few cautious staff members who had quietly grown fond of my presence and wary of Victoria's cruelty. I countered quietly, planting seeds of doubt about Victoria's manipulations without ever revealing my knowledge. Every whisper I dropped, every gesture I made, slowly began to turn the household against her subtle tyranny. That evening, Victoria confronted me in her private study. Her voice was icy, her smile a mask she could not quite maintain. Maria, she said, sharp, controlled, yet trembling slightly, I don't know where you learned your cleverness. But I assure you, your little games will not work. I inclined my head, calm, deliberate. Stepmother. I've only been observing. Learning. Perhaps, someday, I will be able to help you manage things more efficiently. But for now, I'm simply being careful. Her eyes narrowed, suspicion and frustration dancing together. But she didn't press further, she couldn't. And that, in itself, was a victory. Later, alone in my room, I documented everything. Every shift in Victoria's behavior, every subtle attempt to undermine me, every move she had made that I had anticipated. Ethan appeared outside my door again, hesitating. His voice was low, almost reverent. Maria, you're walking a dangerous line. But I'll protect you. Even if it means standing against her. I paused. His words carried weight, a promise and a warning. His protectiveness was growing, dangerously close to obsession. And while it made me safer, it also introduced a new variable I couldn't yet control. I closed my journal and stared out the window. The city below glimmered like a battlefield of lights, but I felt no fear, only anticipation. Victoria was aware now. She was beginning to fight. But I had the advantage. Every step she took to control me, I had already accounted for. And somewhere in the shadows, Ethan watched, not just as a guardian, but as a force I would have to consider carefully. His growing emotional involvement was a new layer to this game, one I would need to manipulate as skillfully as I had everything else. I whispered to the night. Victoria, your reign is crumbling. And nothing, no threat, no ally, will stop me this time. The Wilson estate was alive with whispers. Rumors circulated like wildfire, subtle yet sharp enough to cut at the heart of anyone unprepared. And tonight, I had to walk through the flames. Victoria had discovered my influence over the staff and guests. She had realized I wasn't just a quiet, obedient girl anymore. She had realized I could turn perception itself against her. And she was striking back. The ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers, the air heavy with polite laughter and the faint tang of expensive perfume. Victoria was at the center, radiant and untouchable, or so she wanted everyone to believe. I entered with quiet composure, my head held high. But beneath the surface, my heart raced. Tonight, she had prepared something specifically for me, a carefully orchestrated public humiliation. As Victoria approached a group of investors, she leaned toward me with a charming smile. Maria, dear, she said, loud enough for others to hear, I trust you've been keeping up with the household accounts. I'd hate for a mistake to embarrass us tonight. Laughter followed, faint but sharp, aimed like daggers. The room's attention flicked toward me. Every eye felt like it was drilling into my very being. I paused, pretending to fumble slightly with the notes in my hands. My mind raced, calculating every option, every move. I could feel my pulse in my temples. A slip here could undo everything I had built. But then, I remembered, I had the advantage. I had anticipated this. A small, deliberate correction in my ledger earlier today had made it appear as though the minor discrepancy Victoria mentioned was actually her error. With a quiet smile, I spoke, voice steady and polite. "Oh, stepmother, I noticed a minor oversight in last month's accounts and corrected it this morning. I'm glad it's all in order now." The laughter faltered. Confusion flickered across the guests' faces. Victoria's smile tensed, a crack forming in her composure. Ethan appeared beside me like a shadow, his presence a wall of protection. His jaw tightened as he surveyed the room, and his hand brushed mine, subtle but firm. "You're not alone," he whispered, low enough for only me to hear. "I'll handle anyone who tries to hurt you." I could feel the raw intensity in his voice, a mixture of concern, suspicion, and something deeper, something unspoken, dangerous in its possessiveness. The tension between us sparked like static electricity, thrilling and terrifying all at once. Victoria, however, was not done. She spun toward me, her smile cold, eyes gleaming with fury masked as poise. "Maria, it seems you've been trying to outshine me," she said, her voice smooth, but venom laced between the words. "Do you truly think you belong here?" I met her gaze calmly, every muscle in my body trained to hide the storm raging inside me. "I don't just belong, stepmother," I said, voice steady and polite, "I thrive here. And I intend to make the household better for everyone, without the need for fear or manipulation." The guests murmured. Some glanced at me with curiosity, others with admiration. Victoria's carefully maintained image was cracking, piece by piece, right before the eyes of everyone she sought to impress. Later, when the guests had left, the tension in the house remained electric. Victoria retreated to her private quarters, furious and plotting her next move. Ethan lingered outside my door again, his protective instincts raw. "Maria, tonight was dangerous. She'll escalate. You can't underestimate her." I nodded, closing my journal with deliberate calm. "I know. But I won't back down. Not now, not ever." He hesitated, then spoke, voice low and intense. "You're playing with fire, Maria, and I can't stand by and watch anyone hurt you. Not her, not anyone." The words lingered, unspoken feelings tangled with danger and desire. His protectiveness was a shield, but also a spark, one that could ignite anything if I wasn't careful. I stared out the window at the city lights, the battlefield below. I had survived tonight, but Victoria would not stop. The war was far from over. And Ethan, he was no longer just a stepbrother, no longer just an observer. He was becoming a force in this game, unpredictable and powerful, and I would need him, and control him, if I wanted to win. I whispered into the darkness. "Victoria, the storm is coming. And this time, nothing will stop me." The air in the Wilson mansion had shifted. It was no longer the subtle tension of unspoken schemes, it was electric, charged with anticipation and fear. Victoria knew now that I was no ordinary stepdaughter. I was a threat. And she hated threats more than anything else. Tonight, I would make her realize it. The gala had been carefully planned for weeks. Victoria had invited the city's most influential socialites, investors, and journalists under the guise of celebrating the Wilson family's charitable achievements. But I had my own agenda. Every subtle manipulation, every whispered suggestion, every carefully planted ledger correction had led to this moment. I entered the grand ballroom with quiet elegance. The chandeliers glimmered, reflecting off crystal glasses and polished marble floors. Victoria's eyes immediately locked onto me, her smile taut, like a bowstring stretched to its breaking point. I smiled back, calm and composed. Every movement, every gesture, every word had been rehearsed in my mind countless times. Tonight, I would turn the tables. The first move was simple but effective. A guest approached Victoria, questioning some minor financial detail that had been managed by me. The ledger I had subtly adjusted earlier made the discrepancy appear as though Victoria had mismanaged it herself. "Oh," I said, stepping forward politely, "I noticed the issue earlier this week and made a small correction. Everything is accurate now, thanks to careful attention to detail. The room went silent. Whispers fluttered like butterflies on fire. Victoria's perfect composure faltered for the first time in public. Her smile tightened. "Maria, that's enough," she said, but the sharpness in her voice only drew more attention to the cracks in her armor. Ethan appeared at my side as if he had materialized from the shadows. His presence was like a steel barrier, eyes scanning every corner, every guest, every movement. "You're mine to protect," he murmured, voice low and urgent, brushing his hand ever so slightly against mine, a touch meant to reassure, but charged with tension. I felt the heat of it. Protective, possessive, and dangerous. "I can handle this," I said softly, but I didn't pull away. Victoria tried again, this time more aggressively. She attempted to shift blame for the ledger discrepancies onto me, turning a subtle financial misunderstanding into an accusation meant to humiliate me in front of the guests. I countered calmly, showing documented proof of her manipulations, hidden away in plain sight in my notebook. Each piece of evidence I revealed was subtle, strategic, never too overt, never too confrontational, but undeniable. Gasps rippled through the room. The guests' eyes widened in shock, some exchanging incredulous glances. Victoria's perfectly curated reputation began to crumble, right there on the marble floor of her own gala. Ethan's gaze never left me. His jaw tightened, his protective instinct almost spilling over into aggression. A sharp look at any guest daring to question me, a slight step forward toward Victoria, and I felt the tension between us spike. He whispered again, "If she tries anything, I won't hesitate." I met his eyes, both reassured and wary of the raw intensity in them. His protectiveness was a shield, but it could also burn if uncontrolled. By the end of the night, Victoria was defeated not with violence, not with shouting, but with subtle, precise strategy. I had exposed her schemes, undermined her influence, and won the admiration and loyalty of the very people she had once controlled. She retreated, humiliated, and silent, her empire cracked, her power diminished. I allowed myself a faint, victorious smile. The war was almost over. Later, in the quiet of my room, Ethan remained outside my door, pacing like a predator circling its territory. "Maria," he said finally, voice low and intense, "you're untouchable in the public eye, but you're my responsibility. If anyone dares to hurt you." He didn't finish, but I understood. His protectiveness had evolved into something more, something deeper. Dangerous. All-consuming. I leaned against the window, the city lights twinkling below, and whispered to myself, "Victoria is finished. But the true game has only begun." Tonight, I had won the battle. But tomorrow, the war with emotions, alliances, and secrets would test me in ways even I hadn't anticipated. And Ethan, his presence was no longer just protection. It was a force I would have to navigate carefully, a wild card in the empire I was building. The mansion was quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, when the echoes of chaos still linger in the corners. Tonight, I walked through the halls not as the stepdaughter everyone despised, but as a force no one could ignore. Victoria had been defeated publicly, but tonight, I would ensure her final humiliation, private and absolute. I entered her study, the room suffused with soft lamplight. Victoria sat rigidly at her desk, every inch of her posture screaming tension. "You've been clever," she said, voice tight, sharp, but betraying fear. "I never expected you to rise so quickly." I allowed myself a faint smile, the calm of victory settling over me like a cloak. "I didn't rise quickly. I just learned from the past. And now, I control the future." Her hands trembled as she reached for a hidden ledger, perhaps to reclaim her power. But I stepped closer, eyes steady, unwavering. "Everything you've done," I said softly, "everyone you've manipulated, every hidden account, it's all documented. The authorities have been informed, the public record will confirm it, and your reputation is finished. No one will trust you again, not your staff, not your investors, not even the family you tried to control." For the first time, Victoria's composed mask shattered. Her lips quivered. Rage and fear tangled together in her eyes. "You can't," she whispered, voice breaking. I built this family. You built illusions, Victoria. I built the truth, I said, letting the words hang in the room like a blade. Outside the study, Ethan waited. He had been a silent shadow throughout the night, observing, guarding, waiting. When Victoria tried to escape, his presence blocked her, his protective instincts flashing in every measured step. As I emerged from the study, ledger in hand, Ethan's dark eyes met mine. They were no longer just protective, they were personal, intense, and raw. You did it, he said softly, almost reverently. You've truly outdone her. I looked at him, the truth of the night reflected in his gaze. It's over, Ethan. She can't hurt anyone anymore. Not us, not the staff, not the family she tried to destroy. He took a step closer, and the tension between us shifted, something unspoken, something dangerous and tender all at once. You've changed, he murmured, voice low, intimate. Not just because you're clever, but because you're unstoppable. His words faltered. I saw it, the weight of his emotions, the protectiveness mixed with admiration, suspicion, and something deeper. Desire. Loyalty. Love. I reached for his hand, holding it gently, deliberately. I need you, Ethan, I said softly. Not as a shadow or a shield, but as someone who stands with me, beside me. His breath caught. He nodded slowly, the intensity in his eyes softening just enough. I'll always stand beside you, Maria, always. In the following days, the Wilson empire shifted. Staff loyalty aligned with me, investors followed my guidance, and Victoria's schemes were exposed fully to the world. Her influence vanished like mist in the morning sun. I stood in the grand hall, overlooking the mansion I now truly commanded, not through fear, not through manipulation, but through strategy, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. And beside me, Ethan's presence was steady, protective, and at last, fully aligned with my vision. The emotional tension that had simmered for months now settled into a bond forged in fire, respect, and shared struggle. I closed my journal that night, reflecting on the journey, betrayal, death, rebirth, strategy, and victory. I had taken what once was my curse and transformed it into power. The city lights outside twinkled like stars, each one a reminder that the world was vast, full of opportunities, and that my empire, built from shadows, patience, and cunning, was only beginning. Victoria's reign was over. My influence was undeniable. And Ethan, my protector, my ally, my unspoken passion, was finally by my side. I whispered into the night, victorious and serene. This is only the beginning. And for the first time in my life, I was unstoppable.